Out of the shadowed plum pavilion, Chu Yuanzhen brandished his sword, and the long sword on his back seemed to come to life, slithering and breaking free like a fish, and pausing at his feet. Chu Yuanzhen steps on the scabbard, and softly says, "Let's go." The long sword suddenly pierces the night sky and flies straight up. At the moment it flies into the night sky, Chu Yuanzhen feels countless gazes in the capital focus on him, then retreated. Among them, the gaze from the towering observatory chilled him to the bone. He quickly left the inner city, heading south towards the outer city. If I remember correctly, Liuing 6 was in the sanatorium. He lowered his height and searched for a long time, finally found the sanatorium in the southern city. As he jumped off his sword case, he heard the sound of Buddhist scriptures chanting under the eaves. Amitabha, Chu Yuanzhen greets with a smile. Master Heng Yuan? Heng Yuan silently examines him. It is this humble monk. Are you number 4? Heng Yuan leads Chu Yuanzhen into the room. The two, meeting for the first time, appear very calm, neither close nor distant. He lights the oil lamp. He took out a jar of wine from under the bed, and found 2 porcelain bowls. Chu Yuanzhen asked curiously, "Can Buddhist disciples drink wine?" Heng Yuan replied calmly, "Warrior monks are not picky about food. The implication is that warrior monks do not need to keep precepts." Chu Yuanzhen looked at the wine in his hand. He somewhat regretted not bringing peanuts. Having wine without snacks always feels like something is missing. But he still smiled and said, "I saw number 3 today, and number 3 pretended not to know me, but with his intelligence, I'm sure he recognized me immediately, just pretending not to know for some reason." He shook his head helplessly as he said this. 8th rank cultivation realm. The cultivation is a bit shallow, but he knows the secret of number 3. Number 3 is related to the pure air of the holy temple. We cannot judge number 3 by appearances alone. Master Heng Yuan took a sip of wine and pondered. Compared to number 3, I feel a stronger connection with Lord Shu. You may not know this, he didn't die in Yunzhou. He immediately told number 4 the cause and effect of Shu Qian's resurrection. Led by Chu Yuanzhen. The elixir of rebirth is good, but it has too many limitations. His survival depends on his own luck. I just saw Shu Qian at the Bureau of Music. I have a good impression of him. I guess it's because I've heard you discuss him so many times in the Earth Book fragments. He doesn't feel unfamiliar to me. Heng Yuan smiled and said, "I've never interacted with number 3, but Shu Qian really suits my taste." After several rounds of drinks, Chu Yuanzhen suggested going to see the child. Heng Yuan immediately took him to the side room. This used to be the woodshed. After they went in, Chu Yuanzhen saw the black child immediately, covered in dog fur, lying on the ground, barely alive. Chu Yuanzhen sighed. Although I do not like Buddhism, but they have a saying that is very true. The world is like a sea of suffering. All beings struggle in this sea of suffering. Master Heng Yuan glanced at him. Chu Yuanzhen quickly said, "I mean no offense." Then he changed the topic. "The second round of the examination is in 3 days. Let's go together to see number 3. Heng Yuan said, "Number 3 is unwilling to reveal his identity to us. He said if we meet, a smile is all that's needed." Chu Yuanzhen suddenly realized. He understood why number 3 pretended not to know him. 3 days passed in a flash. Shu Erlang arrived at the examination hall with his family. Shu Qian patted his shoulder and encouraged him. Confucian scholars of the 9th rank have a photographic memory. This exam tests the classics. Erlang must not be under any pressure. Shu Xinian said, "I did very well on the policy questions on the first day. I am naturally good at policy questions. The second round's classics should also be no problem." He said this while slightly raising his chin, and said arrogantly, "Although there are many talented students in the world, we must not be careless. There may not be anyone stronger than me." Shu Qian thought to himself, "You are even better at showing off." After bidding farewell to his family, Shu Xinian walked towards the Gongyuan gate, planning to queue up and enter. Just at this moment, a loud voice sounded in his ear. "Amitabha." A monk and a swordsman smiled at him enigmatically. Shu Xinian turned his head to look. His face suddenly froze. He hurriedly returned to his father and elder brother. "Elder brother, I suspect someone has ill intentions towards me." Shu Pingzha's eyebrows immediately raised upon hearing this, his gaze sharp as lightning. Shu Xinian pointed to a spot behind them. It was a monk and a swordsman. Shu Qian looked for a moment, speechless. Where is it? Shu Xinian showed a look of horror. It was right there just now. Shu Qian patted his little brother's shoulder and said, "All right, you said you weren't stressed. I think you're hallucinating. Erlang, those strangers acting weird. You must not respond." Saying this, he gave Shu Xinian a push on the back. Shu Erlang glanced at his older brother behind him. Puzzled, he asked, "Big brother, what do you mean by this?" Shu Qian smiled awkwardly. "It's nothing, just helping you take the blame. Early spring is a season of wind and rain. A three-masted ship sails through the wind and waves. The wind fills the sails taut. Song Tingfeng looks north and says, 'We'll reach the capital in 10 days. Zhu Guangxiao responds with a hum. He's still taciturn, except his demeanor has become more stable and sincere. Not much has changed. On the contrary, the glib-tongued Song Tingfeng seems like a completely different person. With the military achievements I've established in Yunzhou, enough to exchange for a visualization diagram of the spirit refining realm. I plan to advance to the spirit refining realm. If it were in the past, Zhu Guangxiao might have been surprised to hear him say this. Because they have been colleagues for many years, he knows Song Tingfeng lacks ambition. He's satisfied with being a bronze gong, patrolling during the day, visiting brothels at night, living quite comfortably. What's more, if this military merit in Yunzhou turns into silver, that's enough for him to stay in the Dafeng for a year. But now, especially after that incident, he's no longer surprised by anything Song Tingfeng does. Zhu Guangxiao nodded. He hummed softly again. Song Tingfeng seemed not to hear. He continued to gaze northward. After a long time, Song Tingfeng exhaled and said, "I have decent talent, stuck at the peak of qi refining for so many years. The foundation is solid enough. Advancing to the spirit refining realm by the end of this year won't be hard. I've been thinking during this time, if I weren't so lazy." Song Tingfeng lowered his head. His voice also trembled a bit. "I won't go to the Jiaofeng division anymore." Zhu Guangxiao remained silent, patted his shoulder. "Here in the capital, the public security has been chaotic in recent days, making Shu Pingjia, 100 households officer of the Imperial Guards, and Shu Qian, the watchman, extremely busy. People in the martial world like to be brave and combative. There are indeed heroes who uphold justice, but more are lowlifes. Who among decent people would mix in the martial world? In just 4 or 5 days, Shu Qian alone has caught several drunk and fighting outsiders. According to second uncle, they can catch thieves every night in the outer city. The inner city, however, is peaceful. The 5 guards of the capital on night patrol. If they encounter someone traveling at night, they will shoot an arrow as a warning. At this time, if you choose to flee, you will be shot on the spot. And if it's a suspicious person walking on the roof, there's no need to shoot a warning arrow. They have the authority to kill first and report later. Encountering troublemakers, usually they are detained, awaiting bail from companions. These minor offenses are the most troublesome. That day, Shu Qian patrolled the streets with 2 bronze gongs. He cursed and directed the bronze gongs beside him. "Keep an eye on anyone who doesn't look like they belong in the capital. We must take them down before they cause trouble." But as soon as he finished speaking, the officer hurriedly ran forward and shouted urgently, "Shu Yinluo, there's a fight up ahead." Cheers erupted from the street. They were all onlookers. Shu Qian was furious at this sight. Damn these bastards. Even after confiscating their weapons, they're still causing trouble. "Go, get it down for me. Take them all back to the Yamen." A constable leapt up and shouted, "No fighting is allowed in the inner city. Come with me to the Yamen." Unexpectedly, the 2 martial artists were fighting seriously. When a warrior gets hot-headed, he doesn't care who you are. He'll hit officials just the same. That gong narrowly avoided a vicious punch. Then he became furious. With a clang, he drew his sword and slashed down. But just at this moment, a burst of energy shot up from below, hitting the blade of the knife on the gong, causing the blade to miss. Shu Qian's face immediately darkened. Already angry, now there's another troublemaker. He pressed his thumb on the black gold long blade. With a clang, it popped out half an inch. Someone seemed to sense his killing intent, immediately shouted, "Stop." They were 2 groups of brightly dressed outsiders, including young noblemen, and also beautiful, curvaceous lady warriors. Hearing the master's call to stop, the two wanderers finally ceased fighting. A young man with handsome features, dressed in elegant white attire, cupped his hands and said, "Esteemed sir, I am Lu Chun from the Lu family in Jingzhou." Shu Qian nodded. He looked at the other group and asked, "And you?" The leader on that side was a young man with a gentle demeanor. He hummed. The elder beside him quickly said, "My lord, the Zhao family of Jingzhou." The Lu family and the Zhao family are well-known clans in Jingzhou. The family has pillars who are officials, and masters who roam the underworld, dominating both the black and white worlds. In simple terms, they are local gentry. These two families are at odds in Jingzhou, stabbing each other in the back in politics, sword fights in the martial world, old grudges run deep. This time, coming to the capital to watch, happened to meet on the street. Shu Qian scanned the crowd, and said coldly, "Who just released their qi?" The young master with a delicate demeanor raised his chin. "It was me." Shu Qian slowly nodded. "All right, all of you, follow me to the Night Watcher's office." The handsome young master from the Lu family frowned slightly. "What?" The effeminate young master sneered. "We civil officials don't fight in the streets. Just take these two back to the yamen." Shu Qian said disdainfully, "If I tell you to go, you go. Stop babbling, or I'll cut you down." The refined young master remains untroubled. "Why, under the emperor's rule, even the night watchman must obey the law." Suddenly, there was a clanging sound. The black gold long knife was drawn in an instant. A dark golden thread flashed and disappeared. The effeminate young master hadn't reacted yet, seeing that he was about to meet his end. A beautiful woman beside him, with a gentle demeanor, was the first to react. She took off the silver hairpin from her head and pointed it at the sword energy. Then, with a bang, the silver hairpin shattered. The sword energy cut the delicate hand. Shu Qian sprang up, kicked the woman away. She flew like a meat shield toward the effeminate young master. Shu Qian used internal force with this kick. The bone didn't break, but it injured the opponent's internal organs. Shu Qian didn't look at the effeminate young master. He thrust his long knife forward and sneered, "Do you dare to make a move, even if you have impenetrable skin? If I don't want you to, you still won't leave this capital." The old man's face turned ashen. He looked down at his chest, where a trace of light red had already seeped out. The members of the Lu family re-evaluated Shu Qian. Even his copper skin and iron bones were breached, let alone that casual sword and kick just now. Directly defeated the Zhao family's eldest daughter in the spirit refinement realm, then casually broke through the body defense of the copper skin iron bone realm with one slash. This silver gong could become a silver gong at such a young age, worthy of the capital. Any silver gong from the capital would be considered a prodigy outside. This level of cultivation is terrifying, and the natural talent is even more astonishing. Shu Qian turned back to look at the Lu family. "Are you leaving or not?" The handsome young master didn't dare to disobey. "It's up to you, my lord." Shu Qian escorted two groups of people back to the yamen. He called the managing yamen officer and said, "These two groups, make each person pay 100 taels of silver, not a penny less, release no one. 300 taels go into the account, 50 taels will be shared among you and your colleagues, 50 taels each to the two patrolmen with me. The rest, deliver to Spring Wind Hall tomorrow." The attendant hurriedly said, "Don't worry, I will get it done." Shu Qian nodded with satisfaction, and then went to the stables, riding his beloved mare towards the imperial city. The sun was high. He planned to get a free lunch at Lingbao Temple, and take the opportunity to ask Luo Yuheng about the Heart Sword Manual. To Shu Qian, it didn't seem difficult. When performing, you only need to attach your mental power to the sword, and slash out like an air current. The difficult part is how to smoothly integrate it with the air current. It's like drawing a circle with one hand is fine, but drawing with both hands together is too much for the brain to handle. Often gets stuck, forgets to control his breath when striking. Now he is a silver gong, can freely enter and exit the imperial city, just flashes his token. The guards at the city gate immediately let them pass. They arrived at Lingbao Monastery. The young Taoist guarding the gate went to report. Shortly after, Shu Qian followed the young Taoist into the monastery, but then he was stunned, because besides Luo Yuang, there was also a swordsman in a green robe standing next to her. This was Shu Qian's first thought. "Damn, Luo Yuheng knows that I am the wielder of the Earth Book fragment." She wouldn't sell me out, would she? Shu Qian maintained a calm expression and saluted. Greetings, national teacher, top scholar. Chu Yuanzhen was also a bit surprised. He voiced his inner curiosity. How did Lord Shu come to know the national teacher? Luo Yuhing nodded. Just as she was about to answer, Shu Qian hurriedly coughed forcefully. His guilty conscience was almost written on his face. He hastily transmitted a message to the national teacher, but it was bounced back. He tried again. Got bounced back again. Shu Qian felt a bit depressed. The attitude of his sister-in-law was obvious. We're not that close. No private chats. Shu Qian was getting a bit anxious. But he also knew that using voice transmission, an intimate gesture, with the national teacher was indeed quite forced. Chu Yuanzhen glanced at Shu Qian. Do you need me to step aside? Luo Yuhing's beautiful, spirited eyes looked at Shu Qian, and said calmly, what is it? Shu Qian finally breathed a sigh of relief, and respectfully said, I have encountered some difficulties in practicing the heart sword. Please enlighten me, master. Luo Yuhing nodded. The heart sword technique is indeed difficult to master. Yuan Zhen, help me guide Lord Shu. I need to see His Majesty. That's all. Luo Yuhing's figure disappeared. This woman just vanished into thin air in the quiet room. Shu Qian felt a bit envious. What kind of magic is this? Chu Yuanzhen shook his head and explained. It's not a supernatural power. That was just a thought from the head of the Tao. Just now, it was taken back. Shu Qian gasped in shock. The methods of high-level experts are godlike and demonic. But then he got upset. Today I finally waited for Zhang Li to return to the Xiqiangjian. Only then could I come to the Lingbao Temple. Unfortunately, I still couldn't have a meal with the national teacher. The two left the Lingbao Temple one after the other. Shu Qian kept asking about the secrets of the heart sword. Chu Yuanzhen said, the heart sword is indeed difficult to master. After all, martial artists aren't skilled in the primordial spirit domain. Suddenly, Shu Qian interrupted him, said reservedly, sure, I'm very sorry for causing you to misunderstand. Actually, I've already mastered the basics of the sword of the heart. Chu Yuan nodded and didn't pay much attention, asking, how long have you been practicing the mind sword? Shu Qian thought for a moment. About 10 days. Chu Yuanzhen was startled. He focused intently on Shu Qian. 10 days to master the heart sword technique. What level of primordial spirit is this? Even disciples practicing the Taoist mental methods wouldn't dare claim they could master it in 10 days. Shu Qian smiled and said, Shu never lies. Chu Yuan said differently. Brother Shu's talent amazes me. It's a pity not to cultivate the human sex methods. Shu Qian scratched his head awkwardly. Don't ever have such a thought. Otherwise, people will curse Shu Pingja for being unfilial. How innocent my second uncle is. Shu Qian thought silently. Chu Yuanzhen is a proud and reserved person. He has the integrity of a scholar, and the unruliness of a swordsman. But he never shows this in his words. Compared to the proud Erlang, number 4 seems more like a well-experienced socialite. Shu Qian suddenly asked, Brother Chu, what do you think are the differences between the Jiaofengxi in various regions of Dafeng? It was clearly a very serious and formal lecture. Although Chu Yuanzhen was somewhat confused, still answered truthfully. After abandoning literature for Taoism, I have never stayed overnight at the Bureau of Music. To put it bluntly, I am celibate. Shu Qian asked, the date of the debate is near. What do you think of Li Miozhen from the Tianzong, Brother Chu? Chu Yuanzhen pondered. Heroic and righteous. I greatly admire you, Mr. Chu. Shu Qian thought to himself. Damn it, there are no flaws at all. He smiled and said, Brother Chu, the national teacher has been tormented by karmic fire. Have you also suffered similar torments? Chu Yuanzhen said in surprise. You know about this? Quick-witted Shu Qian hurriedly patched it up. Duke Wei mentioned it to me. Chu Yuanzhen suddenly realized, accepted this explanation as reasonable, because Wei Yuan indeed nurtured him carefully, considered a confidant. Chu Yuan Town thought for a moment and said, I only practice the sword techniques of the human sect, but not its mental techniques. Shu Qian didn't understand. What does this mean? Chu Yuanzhen said, if judged by the martial artists system, I am at the spirit refining stage, but I mainly practice the human sex heart sword, chi sword, and sword mastery. Shu Qian asked, how do you get promoted? What is the next rank? The three sword techniques are means to defeat the enemy, not the foundation of the system. In other words, Chu Yuan Zen doesn't follow the Taoist system, he is based on the warrior system, mainly practicing the human sect swordsmanship. Chu Yuan Zen answered casually, I don't know, the road is ahead. Just keep walking. Shu Qian smiled. Let's continue discussing the practical techniques of the heart sword. Gradually, Chu Yuan Zen discovered that Shu Qian's cultivation knowledge was very shallow, completely unlike someone at the spirit refining realm should be. That's right. He joined the Night Watchman after the tax silver case last October. At that time, he was at the essence refining realm. In just half a year, he advanced rapidly to become a 7th rank warrior. His talent is exceptionally terrifying. Thinking of this, his heart immediately burned with excitement. Talking strategy on paper is extremely boring. Shu Jian, how about we have a match? Shu Qian thought for a moment. He felt this was an opportunity to gauge number 4. He immediately nodded. On the other side, Emperor Yuanjing and Luo Yuheng sat facing each other. That little fellow from Tianzong is coming to the capital. Can Chu Yuan be confident in defeating her? Luo Yuheng's expression was cold. Hard to say. Although Li Miozhen is of the 5th rank, it's highly likely she'll use this opportunity to step into the 4th rank nascent soul stage. If Chu Yuan Zhen doesn't draw his sword, the outcome will be uncertain. Emperor Yuanjing sighed. No matter what, they are all outstanding juniors. It's been a long time since the Great Feng had any young people worth my attention. The female national teacher chuckled lightly. What does your majesty mean by this? Chu Yuanzhen was the top scholar of the 27th year of Yuanjing. Emperor Yuanjing shook his head. Chu Yuanzhen abandoned his official position to become a commoner, no longer subject to the court's orders. Interestingly enough, over the past decade, Dafeng's national strength has been steadily declining. Even the talent is becoming scarcer, especially in recent years. It's been a long time since I've met a junior that satisfied me. Emperor Yuanjing asked in turn, how does the national teacher plan to deal with the head of the Tianzong? In the last battle between heaven and man, the leader of the heavenly sect had not yet reached the 1st rank. Your father fought him to a standstill, with no clear winner. The implication of Emperor Yuanjing's words was very obvious. Dual cultivation is a mutually beneficial practice, and not an evil art where only one side benefits. Luo Yuheng wants rapid progress in a short time, and dual cultivation with him is the only way. At this moment, suddenly, a strong wave of energy fluctuations arose, startling Emperor Yuanjing and Luo Yuheng. It was the first time Emperor Yuanjing encountered such a situation. He suddenly sat up and exclaimed, is there a fight happening in Lingbao Temple? National teacher, what's going on? Luo Yuheng concentrated for a moment, and smiled helplessly. It's Chu Yuanzhen sparring with Shu Qian. Emperor Yuanjing was momentarily bewildered. He couldn't understand how that small gong ended up in Lingbao Temple, or how it became entangled with Lingbao Temple. Luo Yuheng explained, this child's cultivation technique is somewhat unique. Wei Yuan brought him here to seek swordsmanship, so I taught him a move or two. Emperor Yuanjing nodded, accepting this explanation. He focused and was surprised after a moment. Shu Qian can actually fight so fiercely with Chu Yuanzhen? Luo Yuheng is just annoyed by his repeated entanglements about dual cultivation, so she immediately suggests, if your majesty is interested, why not follow this poor Taoist to watch the battle? Inside Lingbao Temple, Shu Qian's black gold long knife danced in an impenetrable manner, constantly knocking away the incoming branches. Each collision would reverberate like muffled thunder, sending ripples of energy like a tidal wave. Chu Yuanzhen stands on the rock garden, hands behind his back, with a smile on his face. He nods occasionally, seeming to greatly admire Shu Qian's combat skills, but in fact, he is more surprised than anything else. Although he only used sword control technique, but under such a number of flying swords attacking, to be able to hold on without showing any flaws, it's hard to imagine he is just entering the spirit refining realm. This means that his primordial spirit is unexpectedly strong. Chu Yuan Town somewhat believed that he had glimpsed the path to the heart sword in just 10 days. Emperor Yuanjing looked at this scene in shock. In his impression, Shu Qian had always been just a small character who solved cases. Since the tax silver case, Emperor Yuanjing had already heard of his name. At that time, he was a quick-witted constable in Shangle County. Today, He suddenly saw him in a fierce battle with Chu Wanzhen. This left Emperor Yuanjing momentarily stunned. National mentor, what is the cultivation level of Shu Qian? Luo Yuhing said lightly. Refining spirit realm. Emperor Yuanjing nodded in realization. Warriors at the spirit refining realm are quite ordinary, they're not even worth his attention. However, a constable from Shangle County reaching this realm in just half a year is not bad at all. Emperor Yuanjing sighed. The Zong sword technique is unparalleled in the world. Such godlike skill, easily handled by a mere warrior. Luo Yuhing said. Shu Yinluo is not bad either. Earlier, Your Majesty said that the Great Feng Court had no rising stars. I see this Shu Yinluo as a dragon among men. It's better if she didn't say that. Emperor Yuanjing hears and sees everything. More and more, it seems that Chu Yuanzhen's talent is unmatched. Shu Qian has become a mere supporting role, especially now, as the two duel in the courtyard. One side is calm and composed, while the other struggles to cope. Emperor Yuanjing frowned and said, his methods are too lacking. Didn't the national teacher say they taught Shu Qian swordsmanship? Luo Yuhing replied, I taught him the sword of the heart. The human sect swordsmanship is profound. Even the entry level is not something that can be achieved overnight. Emperor Yuanjing couldn't help but smile. After all, it was barely satisfactory. He now had a more intuitive understanding of Shu Qian's talent, better than the average person, but far from a true genius.